My name's Aaron Edwards with Santos Springs. Today is November 14th, 2025. USDA put out numbers. CONAB, that's the Brazilian agency, put out numbers yesterday. So we have a lot to cover today. So let's jump into it. Welcome to this week's edition of the Friday Field Report South America. We're going to start looking at the CONAB numbers from yesterday and talk just a tiny bit about the USDA as it pertains to Brazil. So let me go ahead and share the screen here. This you don't need to worry about your Portuguese. Let me get a marker. I'll mark it up for you. And this image is actually from a TV channel that I did an interview for yesterday in Brazil. So these are the CONAB numbers. CONAB is similar to the Brazil version of the USDA. And what you need to understand, so these are million metric tons, so just in general numbers, that was the beginning stocks for Brazil. This is the expected production based on CONAB's number. This is how much Brazil is expected to import. A lot of that comes from Paraguay or just those border countries that there's crushing in Brazil, so they get a little bit over the border because it makes more sense logistically than bringing it from up north. So this 188, if you're rounding it, it would be 189 million metric tons. That's basically the total soybeans that Brazil is expected to have this crop year, which is beginning stocks, production, plus imports. Where is that going? They crush 63 or use 63 million metric tons of that. And then 112 million metric tons are expected to be exported, which would leave Brazil with ending stocks of just shy of 14 million metric tons. We're talking of an increase of 3 million metric tons, basically. That's the big picture CONAB number. The USDA said that there is an expectation that world ending stocks would be reduced by 2 million metric tons. So they had world ending stocks pegged at 124 million metric tons, going down to 122. And so that's on a global level, the ending stocks is a reduction of 2 million metric tons. So basically, if you take the USDA, the reason I wanted to point this out is if you take the USDA number of minus 2 million metric tons, and you compare beginning stocks in Brazil to ending stocks in Brazil, you could see there's still actually an increase, even with the reduction of global stocks. There's actually the projected increase of Brazil stocks is 3 million metric tons, and the projected cut of the USDA is 2 million metric tons. The reason I'm saying that is the issue isn't, are we going to have tight balance sheets, or is Brazil going to run out of soybeans? Even if you would take the entirety of the US cut out of Brazilian soybeans, they would still have larger ending stocks than they did beginning stocks. So even if you would say all of the soybeans that the USDA expects to come out will come out of the Brazil balance sheet, Brazil would still have more soybeans as ending stocks than as beginning stocks. The reason I wanted to point that out is just the massive South American crop, especially Brazil. If this holds true, this will be 177 million metric tons, will be the largest soybean crop any country has ever raised. And the way that's important to look at that from a pricing standpoint, that's the other image that I wanted to discuss. We had the USDA come out with numbers. They actually weren't horrible today, but we still saw, at least as of this recording, we're still seeing pressure on this market. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about basis. So this is basically the basis at the Paranaguá port export. That's the largest export. It would be like the Gulf of Mexico, although percentage-wise it exports less than the Gulf. And what I wanted to point out is in November, so basically old crop soybeans are still drawing almost a $2 positive basis at the port in Brazil. But new crop, if you have really early beans first one's off the combine and you're sitting right by the port and you can get them there, you get a little bit of a bump. I'm going to make it in red here. This is kind of that darkest hour, the point of most harvest inventories. It's lower, and then we start seeing a little bit of an uptick in May, but it's still 40 under. So what we saw in Brazil was, as the Chicago Board of Trade ramped up, and as we've seen this rally in soybeans, oh wow, got over 11, 11.10, 11.15, just been climbing up. We just saw that basis for new crop, not so much old crop, but the new crop basis in Brazil just got absolutely obliterated. So much so that Brazil soybeans remain competitive. So if you look at the price, the export price in dollar, I'm oversimplifying, right? But the export price in dollar, Chicago Board of Trade went up, basis went down, the export price in dollars hasn't changed all that much out of Brazil. So what might happen is, if the Board of Trade comes down, you might see a basis improve, or maybe not. Maybe there's just cheaper beans out of Brazil. The other factor, and I probably should have pulled up a chart for this, but a lot of the costs of raising a crop in Brazil are in Brazilian currency, and Brazilian currency is very weak. So we could actually see, if their currency were to take off and devalue, you could actually see the price that farmers are willing to sell in Brazil go incrementally lower, because if the exchange rate takes off. All that's to say, we need to be mindful of the amount of selling pressure that Brazil can have on the soybean market. And it is massive. Let's just, not hyperbole, okay, but just taking a look at it. And I wish I had better news, but we live in a world how it is. Brazil is raising what will probably be the largest soybean crop. Their exchange rate is relatively strong compared to last year. It's at about 5.5. Last year, at the end of the year, it got to 6.30. That was a little bit of an outlier, but compare 5.5 to 6, that's a 10% adjustment. So they could accept $1 cheaper beans for the same price in Brazilian currency, ballpark, right? If you rounded numbers. Their basis got obliterated with the rally in Chicago, so much so that their soybeans actually stayed competitive on the export market. Just don't underestimate how much farmer selling that could be placed on this market. And the other thing that's important to realize is, one of the stories that has added to this rally, and we've documented it well here, added to this rally in soybeans, one of the stories has been the delay to soybean planting, and that's no longer a story. They're actually 1 percentage point ahead of the historic average. So soybean planting in Brazil is caught up. They're probably raising the biggest soybean crop ever. Their basis got destroyed, so much so that they're actually competitive on the export market. And if their currency were to devalue, which a lot of times, I mean, that would be the expectation, given the fact that it's been historically strong, and coming into the end of the year, just for consumption, they've kept a strong currency by having high interest rates, but high interest rates take a toll on a lot of things. So you might expect coming into the year for there to be a little bit of a paring back of the interest rates to see if they can stimulate some end of year positive economic activity for the country. If for whatever reason there is a devaluation of their currency, which seasonally we would expect, Brazilian farmers might be willing sellers at soybean prices that are just progressively lower. Not trying to be an alarmist, but it's because of these factors that it's so important to be plugged into what's going on in the field in Brazil. And just in general numbers, they aren't quite 60% planted. They might be 60% planted now, so there's still some room to go. We're going to have planting of soybeans all the way into November. We're already in November, but towards the end of November. I expect that by the end of November, we're getting pretty close to that 100% planted mark for soybeans. There might be some spots of dryness. There can always still be a bullish story, but as of right now, they got some much needed rains. Some dry areas got rain. Planting is caught up. They're nervous about price down there, and they're trying to figure out what to do from a pricing standpoint. And it's been a busy week for me talking to farmers down there and figuring out exactly how to navigate these markets. But the long and the short of it is locking in the best soybean price in Chicago in 18 months and then hoping we can get a basis improvement down the road has been about as good as we could do down there. But it is also the best price in 18 months. So if you're looking for help with grain marketing consulting, if you like the way that I talk about markets, handle markets, or if you're looking for opportunities in Brazil and ag, feel free to reach out. We can talk about how the consulting services work. Hope you have a great weekend, great week next week, and let me know if you have any questions.